as a college coach, is it time for all of them to be CEOs and to start hiring OCs and DCs, regardless of what your specialty is? Even Nick Saban, Kirby Smart was under Nick Saban. Nick Saban
Right.
is a defensive coach. Kirby Smart was underneath him. You look at Lane Kiffin, he was the offensive coordinator there for a long time. They had different guys rotating through. Sark was under Saban for a while. So, yeah, like, Sark is the OC, he calls the plays. And the question is, like, should he? Because I would say that if based on what I saw, Texas against Ohio State, who Texas has a better roster, what I would say is
Right.
I thought that Sark got out coached. I thought that his guys were unprepared, and it made me kind of think, man, I probably owe Quinn Ewers an apology because the game of football looks very difficult for the Texas offense when they play somebody with equal or close to talent. And I
Right.
look at other guys like Jaden Daniels is a great example. He played phenomenal football at LSU, but you go to the NFL and you get an OC who can draw up X's and O's and can scheme guys wide open. And
Hmm.
it's like this guy's winning a playoff game as a rookie. Like,
Right.
what are we doing? So this guy's a future MVP player right now, and that
Mm.
is not on anybody's
Yeah.
board, to be fair. So I think as college, Ryan Day is a CEO type of head coach. James Franklin, for him not winning the big games, is a CEO type coach. I would look for this to be the new pattern. Mario Cristobal down at Miami, and I'm sure we'll get to that game. Like CEO, head coach. I think with the structure of college football, you have a GM who is neck and neck with the
And
AD.
and that's my question to you is these GMs that are getting hired and Andrew Luck at Stanford, he's
Mhm.
got more pull than the head coach.
Correct.
So
Correct.
what does that mean if, let's say, Nick Saban doesn't want to coach, but Nick Saban is the GM at Alabama?
Mhm.
What power does that head coach really have?
That goes back to the whole thing, which is, do you want to have a CEO head coach and do you want to have a guy that's heavily involved as a GM, or is
Hmm.
it different? So if I have a heavily involved GM, and I don't know what schools have and have not, but let's just say I have a heavily involved GM, then the head coach is probably going to be a guy who is an XSO on offense or defense. So like that would be the case. If I have a GM who's like, I raise money, I work recruits, and I staff religiously very, very well. Well,
Right.
then then the head coach can be a CEO because he's got a boss ahead of him, kind of moving the pieces around the puzzle. So then you can have a guy who hires an OC and hires a DC as a head coach. So I think it depends on the GM spot. What we're going to start seeing is NFL guys come down to college, some of these legacy coaches coming down and being GMs and running the show a lot tighter. And these head coaches will be OCs and DCs. I just don't think that's the right recipe for success in college football when I look at who has been winning and what their formula was. Ohio State is a great example of that. Ryan Day, CEO, has an OC, and we can't not touch on this. Ryan Day won with a brand new OC, brand new quarterback, brand new DC, and a bunch of new guys.
Right.
Beat Sark, who returned a lot of guys on offense. They lost some, but they returned a lot of guys. They still
Right.
beat him. So,
Yeah.
like, I think that formula, Sark has to let go of the reins and bring in somebody else who's going to bring a fresh perspective. Because I don't think Arch is a much better player than he displayed, and I think that the formula that they played with just wasn't the right one.
That's a fair point. And you talk about Sark in these big games with the amount of time that he has to prepare for these big games. You would think that these teams would come out just a little bit hotter. I mean, with the talent, with with guys that transfer in, it does raise a good question. I think he's gotten to the point though where, and I don't know if this is where college football has gotten, but
Mhm.
the difference between the haves and have nots have gotten so much wider, and that if you have one of these good coaches that at least has a recognizable name, at least has NFL lineage at the end of the day, it's probably your best bet to keep on them because most of these guys, a Dan Lanning, a Suck, these guys are all going to be rotating around the same schools eventually. In Oregon, I mean, maybe one of these guys might go to a one-off like a Wisconsin, but or a USC, like you know, I don't know. Like what happens out in USC if they keep on losing? I don't know.
So what's become really popular has been with these coaches and their contracts. So Billy Napier being the Florida head coach, what was really interesting about his situation is last year they lost a ton of games they shouldn't have lost. Like midway through the season, they're like, is he fired? Is he gone? Are they going to replace him? And the answer was no. And the answer really is economics. He had a massive buyout for his contract. And so the school literally could not afford to fire him. They had to
Right.
either he bite the bullet and you pay 20, 30, $40 million, which is insane. Like Jimbo Fisher had an insane buyout for his contract. It's either that or you ride with the guy. And they rode with him. And he actually turned the ship around a little bit, and they're probably a contender this year to be solid. So that what's becoming
Right.
popular is these massive buyouts. It's the guarantees for players in the NFL. These huge buyouts are going to prevent coaches from getting fired a little bit faster. But what
Right.
also is the case is you have to, if you want one of these big name guys, you have to fundraise even more. You have to go and get even more money. You have to get 25, 26 million for your roster. And then another 15, 16 for your head coach if you want to steal one of these big name guys. And so the question becomes like, when does the music stop? When does the money stop flowing? When do we get some normalcy and figure it out? Because right now, coaches having huge buyouts, players getting huge contracts to sign. Well, we can
Where's
talk
the
about,
development? Where
well,
is the room for the development? And that's what's being lost. You're gonna buy, and poach, and poach.
yeah,
I would guarantee you that this after this football season, with how high these stakes are and what these TV contracts are like, dude, anybody that has a good game on a Saturday, teams are in your DMs. It's
for sure.
there's no time to be wasted. I mean, you're trying to build those back channel relationships. The moment you even see somebody's body language change on TV, it's just it's turned into like Texas Tech. We have yet to see Texas Tech on a major scale this year. And once we do, we will find out truly how well this, how well this money can go. They spent $55 million on the team this year. They pretty much have to win 9 games this year, or
Yeah.
it's just looking like this is not really going to be worth it. Here it comes, I guess, you know?
We don't have to even look too far to see this. We don't have to touch on it very long, but Nico Ilimayava goes from Tennessee to UCLA. Guy completes 50% of his passes. They lose the game. He looks horrible.
Lost
And
by
it's like
40.
it and that's a guy where he has the makeup to be a really good player. Kind of a Jaden Daniels look a little. And
I don't think he has it, man.
okay, so okay,
I don't think he's got it.
he's tall, he's fast, he has a humongous arm. He's not as accurate, but he has the build to be a special guy. And you go and you chase the money over what you said, chase development, which Josh Heupel develops guys. And so you go for an extra 900,000 or $1 million, whatever you want to have 2 million bucks, whatever, probably cost himself 20, $30 million in the NFL making this one decision. And so these kids will start looking hard and deep about making these adjustments. And I'm sure some are, it just doesn't get released. But I think you're right. Going from school to school to school, there has to be some rule put in place, but these guys have to chase development because at the end of the day, that's what all that matters. You can't chase 800K, $1 million,
Yeah.
$2 million, but you could have a $20 million contract in the
All right.
NFL in just a season.
That's a good point. I wouldn't put it on the table that Nico Miliava doesn't finish his career at UCLA.
Oh, for sure.
He kind of
He's gone.
reminds me of Brock Osweiler a little bit, if people remember that name. Just like, it looks like on paper he should have all the talent, big arm, and it's just not there. I
Let
don't
me get
see it. I know they
let,
got
let
to the
me
playoff last year,
let me give you
but
a throwback. He's like a Ryan Mallett, like big arm. Like you thought that guy would translate for
man,
sure, and then you're just like, what happened to
it's
this guy?
not. But he's not translated in college football, and that's what's scary to me. Is that he's not like, we're not in the NFL. We're not talking about, you know, somebody that's not translating to the NFL like a Trey Lance who was in a different situation.
True.
This guy is not doing it in college, and
But to your point, these guys are getting paid, and so that's what you expect. And so the personal development has to be there because we're
if
committing
he,
dollars
I
to him.
don't, regardless if you're paid or not. I mean, this kid was a top 3 or 4 quarterback in his class. You just expect these kids to come in and regardless of the pressure, regardless of the noise, that to just perform. And I know he
That's
was
fair.
on Tennessee last year, and they got to the playoffs, so him and his dad upped the ante. But I just don't really see it from the kid, and we can get off of that for a second because I do want to talk Sean Clemson and LSU because Kate Klubnik, surrounded by the talent that he is surrounded by, I just would expect more from him. I mean, he literally went 19 for 38. And a guy like him, who was probably the preseason Heisman favorite, is probably played himself out of that trophy in week one. Besides the Texas game last year,
Mhm.
the inconsistencies of K. Klubnik is kind of the downfall, is the Achilles heel of this team. And we said it before that, these QBs, you still have to make the throws. You can manage the game all you want. You still have to make the throws. And if you're going 19 for 38 against anybody, it's just not going to work.
I agree with that. And I was on Twitter last year, and there were rumors that he might transfer. And I was like, he should transfer. They won't have the roster. I don't think they're going to be very good, or they're not going to be as good as people think they're going to be. And I mean, just trashed on the entire time. And I was actually back in my mentions today going at it. But with Cade, I think he's a really good player. I do think he's a good player. I think the struggle with him is two things. Number one is that his offensive coordinator doesn't scheme the game up very well. With
Mm,
college football, you can find one or two guys on a team. It's pretty rare that this doesn't happen, but you can find one or two guys in the secondary that you're like, that guy, he has slow hips. That guy doesn't know how to make the reads. That guy, he doesn't turn very well out of his breaks. We can exploit that over and over and over. And it feels like the Clemson offense doesn't do that very well. Some offenses you watch an Oregon offense, it's like a warm knife through butter. Everything is easy, everything is smooth. With Clemson, it's just like Texas. It's so hard to watch. You're like the
choppy. It's
offense
very choppy. Yeah.
offense can't be this
No
hard.
rhythm. I mean, 19 for
None.
38, you could talk about inaccuracy all you want. That's just poor rhythm and like you said, bad
Poor
scheme.
calls,
Yeah.
poor calls, poor schemes. Guys aren't getting open. That's one. The second thing is going to be in the offseason, people were saying that that was the best wide receiver room in the country or a top three wide receiver room in the
hmm
country.
hmm
And so one of two things has to be true. Either that is incorrect and they overrated, or Cade stinks. I don't think Cade stinks. I think that we overhyped the talent around him on offense, along with a not so great offensive coordinator, and you get a sputtering offense. Now, to be fair, again, if you go and you say LSU doesn't score 17 points on us at our house, you think with best receiver room in the country, Heisman front runner, that's probably not enough points to beat us. And it
Right.
was. So like the question is it really Cade's fault, or are we just not develop? Do we not have the right offensive coordinator in the chair?
I think I think a lot of things can be true. Cade Club. I mean, these quarterbacks are elite, but for how elite, we don't really know. I mean, you're going up against LSU, who probably has the best retooled roster in the country. They might have the best secondary in the country this year,
Sure.
and that talent is young. Like that, those are hard defenses to play against week one, especially like I keep going back to without a preseason. And I'll ask you a question later about should these teams be scheduling these games week one
Hmm.
if the outlook, because there's two sides of the sword. It's, they lost to LSU, who could very well be the best team in the country. So the loss isn't going to be that huge. But two, you face your QB being out of rhythm and losing confidence and your offense just getting off to an ugly start. I don't know how much credit you give to that, but at the same time, I do think that the LSU defense did a similar job to what Ohio State did with Arch Manning, and was not only make the QB uncomfortable but confuse him, and to the point where his offensive coordinator doesn't really know what to do other than to just take shots downfield and hopefully they convert it. But K Covenant not really using his legs. He's not really going to outrun anybody on LSU.
No, no, and you if you don't scheme up guys going deep and throwing 50-50 balls, which in college football, by the way, you have to throw probably two of those a quarter. You probably need eight
Absolutely.
passes a game where it's one-on-one, you have a safety or you've got a corner and a wide receiver, and you have to hope that your guy makes a play. You might throw a pick, you might move the ball 45 yards downfield. Like you have to take those shot plays, and Clemson doesn't do a lot of that. They don't do a good job of getting those shots, and a lot of teams don't. So that to them, it's fair. LSU probably has maybe the second, maybe the best secondary in the country. And so you have an LSU defense who's faster, who is better than the opponent they're going against. Receivers, nobody was open. And so again, I go back, like, is it Cade's fault? Maybe. But if nobody's open, we're going to throw the ball to. Like,
Right.
if we go back and watch the film, there aren't a lot of guys that are screaming open and he missed the read. And that's what people see him as a potential first round draft pick is he can make the throws. So the question becomes, are the guys open to make the throws to? And
Mm.
they just weren't. In my opinion, they just were not.
Yeah. Another side of the ball, Garrett Nussmeier, who obviously his dad's offensive coordinator in the NFL, he looks like the most NFL ready quarterback to me, at least by week one. The pre snap reads, the ability to just make any throw that he needs to. I think that I would like for him to be a little bit more mobile. Maybe that's just for my taste, but from what I see week one from him, he would have to be at the top of my QB rankings after week one, just for not only that performance alone, but just kind of projecting of what he looks like for the rest of the season. I mean, the guy threw, I think, it was 4,500 yards last season, so I expect him to be at least over 4,000 easily.
I, if I'm an NFL GM and I'm drafting and Garrett Nussmeier's on the board and I pass on him and I get fired because of it, I will live with it. I just don't see what everybody else sees with him. He's a good player, he's a fine player. I would just be comfortable losing my job not taking him than taking him
You
in the
think he's a better
NFL.
prospect than Arch Manning?
No, I don't. I don't. I look at Arch Manning like he could be a more refined Josh Allen. And to me, I'm not. I look at Nussmeier as maybe Jared Goff, and so I'm not. I'm taking Arch because the upside is 6'5". He's big. He's fast. He can make all the throws. Garrett Nussmeier, a little slower, similar stature, a little shorter, and he can make the throws too. But I'm taking the guy that can break the game open two different ways. I'm always taking that.
So
So
you're
yeah,
taking
no.
Nussmeier over Lenore Sellers?
That's a tough one. That's a really, really tough one. I'm probably taking Nuss over Lenore Sellers, and I'm comfortable losing my job not drafting Lenore's. Only because the guy doesn't throw
That's a
that
good
many.
prospect.
He doesn't throw that many passes. He runs a lot,
Right.
which is fine. He's a big dude. And
Yeah,
people compare him to Anthony Richardson. He's a much better player than Anthony Richardson for
much
sure.
better. Yeah.
Much better. But in the NFL, there are going to be games where you're required to throw the ball 35 times, and I haven't seen him do that. I don't know if he can put a team on his back and just dice up a defense. I don't know.
He
So
would be the perfect NFL prospect if he could, if his middle game was good, if it was
So yeah,
consistently
so you
shown.
would take him.
Yeah.
So you would take him.
I
But
would take Lenore Sellers probably has the most upside out of any quarterback that I've seen. I don't say in a while, but I mean, he's up there with some of the prospects because of the way that he's just how physically built he is, the way that he could. I mean, he literally is taking D linemen just rub off his back, off his shoulders, and then he just like
that's
that.
not.
That you can't teach. Obviously, in the NFL is not.
No,
It's not going to be. He's not going to be able
no.
to do that every single play. But I do think that if you can get a guy with that physical ability and just the threat that he is, if he could figure out a middle game, then he will be. I'm not gonna say he's gonna be great, but I think that he could definitely be a starter.
I agree. I think that he has the tools to be an NFL guy for
He's
sure.
probably gonna come out after this year if he has a good
He
year too,
should.
though.
No, he should get your money. Like get into a system. He'll be a mid first round draft pick. He absolutely should come out, and he'll hopefully he lands with a good offensive coordinator that can develop him. I don't. The physical tools are like a double-edged sword because if you
Hmm.
say he's great physical tools in college, well, everybody in the NFL has great physical tools, and you're not getting past Myles Garrett with rubbing off your shoulder. It's not happening. So I need you to make the throws. And can he make the throws? He can. Can he do it consistently and 20, 35 times a game? I haven't
He
seen that
probably
yet.
can. He probably can't, and that's why he's not doing it. And it's probably the progression that he's on right now, and they're in the business of winning games, and to ask him to throw the ball 30 times a game, it's probably and he turns the ball over a lot. He fumbles the ball a lot.
A lot.
So the turnovers are there. And their best draft prospect on their team right now is a sophomore, and Dylan Stewart, the edge rusher,
Yeah, he's
who could be a
ridiculous.
number one pick in the 2027 NFL draft.
Mm,
He hurt his shoulder. I don't think it's anything too serious, but
you're
I
fine.
mean, they have a solid team in South Carolina, and
They do.
Lenore Sellers is one of those guys who in college can put a team on his back, and you never know what can happen. He could just kind of be one of those stories this year, and they have the talent. Their defense is a little bit worse than last year, but they
Yeah,
definitely have the talent.
they're one of those teams that any given Saturday can be a shock. And
Right.
if you're not paying attention, you don't know how talented this team is. But if you're locked in, you're like,
He's good
yeah,
enough to win a
yeah.
game by himself. He is.
And they have
He
a
is.
lot of team and they have a lot of games on their schedule this year where it's like, man, he could crush somebody's dreams.